A family story from New Mexico. I was sitting in the garden thinking about my son's request for me to sell the house. Then the phone rang. On the screen, a familiar name, Susan Lee, my closest friend and my lawyer for many years. Her voice on the other end was nothing like her usual calm tone. It was urgent, heavy. "Helen, I need to see you right away." "There's something serious about your house." I froze, my heart pounding. My house? What could possibly be wrong with the deed? Susan spoke slowly, each word like a blow. "Your name appears on a mortgage file at the bank, but I know you never signed it." The world went silent. My hand trembled so hard I nearly dropped the teacup. A mortgage signature? I had never signed anything like that. Who would dare forge my name? And more importantly, why? A cold fear crept over me. Only one name surfaced in my mind. David, my son. "My name is Helen Martinez. I'm 67 years old, a widow from Santa Fe. I will uncover every lie, and if my son forged my name, I'll make a decision. Subscribe if you like this kind of story." In recent months, my son David had been dropping by more often. I still remember him as a boy clinging to his father's legs, eyes wide and innocent, untouched by worry. But the man who walked through my front door now looked very different. Pressed designer shirts, an expensive cologne that lingered in the air, his phone buzzing nonstop as if he were always in the middle of something urgent. "Mom, I've got a golden opportunity in real estate," David said one evening, his eyes glimmering with excitement, or maybe desperation. "If we invest now, in just a few months you'll see the money triple. Imagine how much easier your retirement will be." I sat back in my worn armchair, my fingers tracing the frayed fabric, a reminder of how long I'd lived here, how much this house had carried me through. David grabbed a napkin and began sketching, numbers, rough outlines of properties, sliding it toward me like a deal too good to ignore. "You wouldn't need to do much, Mom. Just contribute a little, or you could even use the house as collateral. It's simple. Just a few signatures. I'll take care of everything." My eyes drifted to the family photos on the wall, to the corners of this home that held 4 decades of memories. The thought of signing it away tightened my chest, but David leaned closer, his hand warm but insistent as he clasped mine. "I just want you to be comfortable, Mom. Dad's gone. It's my job to take care of you now." His words pierced through my loneliness. Since my husband's passing, I'd been living quietly, stretching my pension, sometimes feeling invisible. Hearing my only child speak with such conviction, whether it was genuine or not, soothed a part of me that longed to be cared for again. And yet, there was something odd in his eyes. Not the genuine spark I'd seen years ago when he landed his first job, but a brightness that felt too forced, too quick, like a flame flaring just before it burns out. "I don't know, David," I murmured. "I'm too old for risks. This house, it's all I really have left." He frowned slightly, then forced a smile. "Mom, it's not a risk." "It's a sure thing. You trust me, don't you?" For a split second, I saw a shadow flicker across his face, the kind of shadow that made me question who he had become, but I pushed the thought away and smiled back weakly. This was my son. Surely, he would never hurt me. That night, after David left with his sketches and his confident smile, I sat alone in the quiet of my living room. The clock ticked steadily, echoing in the silence. I glanced at the empty recliner across from me, the one my husband used to sit in. It had been 12 long years since he passed, yet some evenings I still caught myself turning to speak to him, only to remember he wasn't there. Before he died, he'd squeezed my hand and whispered, "Helen, promise me one thing. Never gamble your security, not even for family. Keep the boundaries clear." At the time, I'd nodded, certain I'd always be strong enough to do just that. But now, at 67, I felt the edges of that promise fraying. My pension covered the basics, but it wasn't much. The house was the only real wealth I had left. The walls that had sheltered our marriage, the rooms where I'd raised David, the kitchen where I'd nursed my husband through his last illness. It wasn't just property, it was my life in bricks and mortar. David knew that. And maybe that's why his words cut so deeply. He wasn't just offering an investment, he was offering to take on the role his father once held, the protector, the provider. And I wanted to believe him. I wanted so badly to feel safe again, to believe my son truly had it all under control. I'd always been proud of David. At 40, he carried himself with confidence, spoke the language of success, and in the eyes of others, he was a man on the rise. To me, he was still the boy I had rocked to sleep, the child who once whispered, "Oh, don't worry, Mom, I'll always take care of you." And so, when he spoke about investments and bright futures, my heart leaned toward him, even as my instincts tugged the other way. I was a mother, alone in this house full of memories, aching for connection, and that ache made me softer than I should have been. David started coming by every other evening, always with the same bright certainty and the same restless energy. One night, he brought takeout, set the cartons on my kitchen table, and spread a folder beside the plates as if it were another dish to be served. "Mom, look at this duplex in Rio Rancho," he said, tapping a glossy printout. "We get in now, we ride the appreciation." It's a layup. I kept my hands on the warm paper cup of tea, letting the heat anchor me. A layup. He used to say home, not asset. "And you'd manage it yourself?" I asked. "With my team," he said. "Kyle handles contractors." Or, he hesitated. "Miguel." "Same guy." "Nickname." He smiled too fast. My husband, rest his soul, used to say the truth never needed speed. I didn't say that out loud. "How much would you need from me?" I asked. "Not much." "A bridge, 10, maybe 15, or—" He flipped to another sheet. "We could use the house as a line of credit." Zero fuss. A gust of wind rattled the chimes on the porch. I felt my stomach tighten, then loosen when he passed me a napkin with numbers. The same napkin from last week, I realized. The ink retraced, margins darker, the totals different. Last week he'd said 8%, today he said 12. "Why the change?" I asked. "Market's moving," he said, in a good way. He took a bite of lo mein, didn't taste it, and was already turning to the next page. My son used to eat with his whole heart, head bent, thanking me for dinners I'd made out of almost nothing. Tonight he chewed like it was a chore. "David," I said gently, "what's your plan if a tenant misses a payment?" He grinned. "We screen hard." "No way that happens." "No way," I repeated, hearing my own voice fold around the words. Inside a thought, there's always a way it happens. Your father knew that. You know it too. His phone buzzed. He glanced, face tightening. "I have to take this." He stepped into the hall. I heard fragments. "Earnest money by Friday. Hard money's lined up. Yeah, I'll get the doc signed." The call ended. He returned with that smile again, one size too big for his face. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Better than okay," he said. "Things are moving fast." "And the partner on this—" "Kyle," I said. "Miguel," he corrected, then flushed. "Same person." Long story. I looked at the folder. Property photos, projections, none of it with letterheads. When I lifted a page, the corner of a form peeked out. My name was already typed at the top. "David," I said, and the name clung to my tongue in a way it never had. "What is this?" He slid the paper free with a practiced hand. "Just an authorization so I can speak to the bank on your behalf." "Saves you trips. It's not binding, not binding." Inside, I flinched. There isn't a single paper in banking that means nothing. My husband had taught me to read 3 times before signing once. The date line was filled in. Today's date. The signature line was flagged with a neon tab. "I'd like Susan to look at it," I said. "She makes things complicated," David said too quickly, then softened. "Mom, I'm trying to help you. I want your retirement to feel like a blessing, not a budget. You trust me, don't you? I wanted to." The word yes pressed against my teeth, but the room felt slightly tilted and I couldn't tell if it was me or him. When did care start sounding like a sales pitch? He leaned in, lowering his voice. "This window closes in 48 hours. If we miss it, it's gone." "Windows don't close," I said. "People do." He blinked, and for a second I saw something raw. Fear, not for me, but for himself. The house wasn't a home in his eyes tonight. It was a lever. "Tell me more about the tenants," I said, buying time. "About your team." "Show me something with a letterhead." He laughed lightly, but there was an edge in it. "You're overthinking." "Maybe," I said. Inside, I answered myself. Or maybe I've finally started thinking at all. He reached for my pen, the plain blue one I use for grocery lists, and set it by the authorization form. The pen rolled, bumped my teacup and stopped. We both watched it settle, a tiny, ordinary sound. Then he pushed the paper an inch closer. "Just your initials," he said. In the living room, the old clock chimed 7, the notes thin but steady. I remembered my husband's last night in that recliner, the way he'd squeezed my fingers and whispered boundaries like a prayer. I didn't move. "David," I said, "why haven't I met Kyle?" Or Miguel. "He's busy," David said. "You don't need to meet everyone in my work life." "Then show me that LLC," I said. "The company name. You mentioned it last week." He hesitated just long enough for me to notice. "We're restructuring?" "New name." "Cleaner cap table?" "I don't know those words," I said. "Inside. I know what they mean anyway. They mean nothing I can hold." He sat back, irritated surfacing like a crack in glass. "Mom, you're making this harder than it needs to be." "And you're making it faster than it needs to be," I said quietly. We stared at each other, this strange distance between us like a hallway that had grown overnight. He broke first, folding the authorization and tucking it into the folder. "Fine," he said. "Think about it. But don't wait too long." When he left, he kissed my cheek the way people greet acquaintances at church. Polite, quick, already turned toward the door. I watched the porch light catch his shoulders square and tense. He didn't look back at the photos on the wall. He didn't ask about the garden, the roses he used to help me prune when he was 10. After the door closed, the house breathed again. I gathered the takeout cartons, found his napkin under the soy sauce packet. The numbers were smudged, different again from last week's. 8%, 12, now guaranteed 15. Guarantees. Another word my husband taught me to fear. In the quiet, a thought came and would not leave. When did my son stop visiting and start circling? When did we become sign here? I traced the edge of the authorization tab in my mind, the date already inked in, my name already printed. I felt warmth rise in my chest, shame, maybe, for wanting to be taken care of, and anger for being asked to pay for it with the only thing I have left. The next morning, I called Susan and asked her to meet me at noon. As I hung up, the chimes rattled again, the sound sharper now, like a small alarm I could finally hear. I pressed my palm to the wall, feeling the steadiness of the house under my hand, and thought, if there's a window closing, it's the one where I still pretend not to see. That night, after David left with his folder and his forced smile, I sat in the kitchen long after the dishes were cleared. The silence pressed in, and I let myself slip backward, into years I thought I'd buried but never really had. I remembered the winter of 1994, when the furnace broke and my husband had already been laid off from the railroad. The house was so cold that breath fogged in the air, and I layered 3 sweaters just to get through the nights. David was a boy then, 10 years old, curled up under blankets with his homework balanced on his knees. I used to tell him stories by candlelight, pretending it was an adventure, though really it was because we couldn't afford the electric bill that month. We survived on $26 of groceries each week, beans, rice, potatoes. And still I never once thought of risking this house. It was the one anchor I had, the one place I swore I would protect. Back then, David looked at me like I was his whole world. Now he looks at this house like it's just another number in his calculations. I traced the edge of the table with my fingers. These grooves, worn smooth over decades, told our story more truthfully than any bank statement could. I thought of the years after my husband's diagnosis, how I slept on the sofa beside his hospital bed when we moved it into the living room. 38 nights without real rest, counting every pill, every shallow breath. I told myself, Helen, you can endure anything, as long as this roof holds over your head. Now I'm 67, the pension barely stretches to the end of the month, and I've sold the car to cut insurance costs. Some nights I heat a single bowl of soup and that's dinner. I've lived small because security mattered more than comfort. And yet, David's voice still echoed, Mom, you trust me, don't you? I trust him, I thought bitterly, but not in the way he means. I trust that he's desperate. I trust that something in him has shifted, that the boy who once pressed his allowance into my palm, for groceries, Mom, is the man who now pushes papers toward me, urging me to sign. It is a cruel thing to feel your own child turning into a stranger, right in front of you, in the very home you built for him. I looked at the clock on the wall. Each tick sounded sharper, like it was keeping score. For the first time, I admitted aloud in the empty room, maybe I've already lost more than I realized. and as soon as the words left my lips, I felt the weight of them. Not just the risk of losing the house, but the ache of losing the closeness we once had. Somewhere along the years, maybe in the space between promotions, or when the phone calls became shorter, more distracted, I had stopped being his center, and maybe I hadn't wanted to see it until now. Still, I pressed my palm against the wall, steady and solid, whispering to myself as though my husband could hear, "You told me never to gamble my security, but what do I do when the gamble wears my son's face?" The next afternoon, I found myself standing outside Susan Lee's law office, clutching my handbag so tightly my knuckles turned white. I'd known Susan for over 30 years. She'd been there through my husband's illness, through the funeral, through the endless paperwork of widowhood. She had always been steady, direct, the kind of friend who never sugarcoated the truth. When I stepped inside, she was waiting, a manila folder open on her desk. The blinds were half drawn, the light cutting sharp lines across the papers. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Helen," she said, her voice firmer than I'd ever heard it, "I need you to look at this." She turned the folder toward me. A stack of documents, neatly clipped, stared back at me. My breath caught. At the top of the page was my name, typed in bold official font. Below it, a signature. My signature. Except it wasn't. This can't be," I whispered, my fingers trembling as I reached out. The letters looked like mine, but too smooth, too practiced. I'd signed my name thousands of times on checks, grocery receipts, birthday cards. I knew the natural slant of my own hand. This was a forgery. Susan's eyes softened, but her words cut like glass. "Helen, this is a mortgage agreement. It puts your house up as collateral for a loan. And it was submitted last week." I stared at the page, my chest tightening. "But I never signed this. Who—" Susan didn't make me finish. I traced the application. "Helen, it was filed under David's name as the borrower. He used your identity for the collateral." The word struck me like a blow. For a moment, the office tilted, and I gripped the edge of her desk to steady myself. My son. My only son. The boy I raised in this very house. "No," I said, my voice breaking. "There must be some mistake. David? He wouldn't—" Susan leaned forward. "Helen, look at me. I've reviewed the records myself. This wasn't an accident. He planned this." Her certainty pierced the fragile hope I'd been clinging to. Images flooded my mind. David sliding that authorization form toward me, the napkin with shifting numbers, the way he avoided my eyes when I asked about his partners. The puzzle pieces fell into place one after another until the picture became undeniable. Inside, my heart answered with a whisper I didn't want to hear. "He would? He already has?" Tears blurred the page as I forced the words out. How long has my son seen me as a signature instead of a mother?" Susan reached across the desk, resting her hand gently on mine. "I know this hurts. But if you don't act, you risk losing everything you've built. You kept this home through layoffs, through sickness, through years of scraping by. Don't let it slip away now. Not like this." I looked down at the forged signature again, the ink bold and final, as if someone had stolen not just my name, but my very voice. 40 years of memories pressed in around me, the nights by candlelight with David, the laughter that once filled our kitchen, the promises my husband made me keep. For the first time, I admitted it out loud. My son. He's not the boy I remember anymore. Susan squeezed my hand. "No, Helen. He's a man who's made dangerous choices, and if you don't confront him, those choices will bury you both." I nodded slowly, the weight of the folder like lead between us. Inside me, love and betrayal clashed in a storm. But beneath it all, a hard, clear truth began to settle. I couldn't keep pretending. It was time to face my son. I waited until the evening, the folder Susan had given me still heavy in my bag. David arrived just after 7, smelling of cologne and fast food, his phone buzzing in his pocket. He kissed my cheek too quickly, like someone checking a box, then sat at the kitchen table. I didn't pour tea this time. I didn't set out plates. I opened the folder and slid the document across the table. "David," I said, my voice steady but cold, "did you mortgage this house?" He froze. For the first time in weeks, he was silent. His hand twitched toward the paper, then pulled back. His smile flickered on and off like a faulty bulb. Mom, he started, voice thin. You don't understand. It's just temporary. The project, it's about to break big. I needed collateral, and this house is mine, I cut in. It's the only thing I have left. He leaned forward, eyes wide, almost pleading. I did it for us. For the family. Once the deal closes, you'll have more money than you can imagine. We can sell this place, move you somewhere nicer, safer. A condo, no maintenance, no headaches. Doesn't that sound good? I stared at him, the words hitting me like cold water. For the family. That phrase used to mean bedtime stories and scraped knees, Sunday dinners and laughter spilling through these walls. Now it sounded like an excuse, an empty sales pitch. You forged my name, I whispered. You lied. His jaw tightened. I didn't lie. I just moved ahead a little faster than you were ready for. It's business, Mom. Everyone does it. Business? I repeated, anger trembling in my chest. My home isn't business. It's my life. He pushed a pen toward me, the same gesture as before, only harder this time. We can fix this. If you just sign over the house officially, it'll be clean. We'll sell, pay off the loan, and I'll put the rest into a new build. Trust me, this is the smart move. For a long moment I looked at him, the boy I'd carried through winters without heat, the man who once swore he'd always protect me. Now his eyes shone, not with love, but with calculation, a hunger I didn't recognize. Inside, a voice rose, sharp and undeniable. He isn't protecting me. He's consuming me. I pushed the pen back toward him. My hand shook, not from fear, but from the ache of disappointment. No, David, I said quietly. I won't sign. Not now. Not ever. His face hardened, the mask slipping just enough for me to see the desperation underneath, and for the first time I felt something stronger than sorrow. I felt the edge of resolve. The next morning I met Susan again. She had another folder waiting on her desk, thicker this time, its edges dog-eared from hours of work. I did some digging, she said, sliding the file toward me. Her tone carried no hesitation. You need to see this, Helen. I opened it slowly. Page after page of statements, overdue notices, letters stamped in red. Numbers that bled across the paper, tens of thousands, hundreds, owed to banks, to private lenders, to names I didn't even recognize. Susan pointed to a line. This one's from a hard money lender. 12% interest, compounding monthly. He's defaulted twice already. My stomach churned. Hard money. The phrase itself felt like a warning, like iron chains tightening around my son's ankles. There's more, Susan continued. She flipped to another set of documents. All those golden projects he mentioned? I checked property records. No purchase offers, no contracts. Nothing in his name, nothing in escrow. Helen, they don't exist. The folder blurred before my eyes, my throat tightening. All lies. Not dreams of a brighter future, just scaffolding built on desperation. Susan's voice softened. He isn't building anything. He's covering holes. Every story he told you was to buy time, to move money from one debt to the next. I closed my eyes, gripping the arm of the chair. My husband used to warn me about this kind of spiral, borrowing from tomorrow to survive today until there's nothing left to borrow. And now, my son was spinning in that spiral, dragging me toward the center with him. He's not doing this for you, Susan said gently. He's doing it to hide from his own collapse. The words settled heavy in my chest. I thought back to David's eyes across the kitchen table, the flicker of fear I'd mistaken for excitement. He wasn't inviting me into success. He was begging me to drown with him. For a moment, shame washed over me, shame that I had believed, that I had wanted to believe. Then came anger. Not just at him, but at myself for ignoring the warnings, for mistaking hunger in his voice for care. I whispered almost to myself, he's not saving the family. He's saving himself. Susan reached across the desk, steadying me. And if you don't draw a line now, Helen, he'll take you down too. I nodded, my jaw tightening. The truth was laid bare before me in black and red ink, and with it came the understanding I had tried so hard to resist. My son's future was already crumbling. I had to decide whether my own would crumble with it. That night the house felt heavier than ever, every corner pressing down on me. I sat in the dim light of the living room, the folder Susan had given me still on the table. The numbers on those pages haunted me like shadows creeping along the walls. What was I supposed to do? He was my son, my only child. I carried him in this very body, raised him with hands that once scrubbed floors and clipped coupons just to keep food on the table. And now, was I to hand him over to the world, expose his lies, let him bear the punishment? The clock ticked. My chest tightened. I buried my face in my palms, whispering into the silence, God help me. I don't know what to do. And then I saw him. Not David, but my husband, as he'd been on his last night. His face pale, his hand weak in mine, but his eyes still steady. Helen, he had said, love isn't always saying yes. Sometimes love is saying no, even when it breaks you. Those words, long buried under grief, returned with a clarity so sharp it pierced my heart. I lifted my head, tears burning my cheeks. If I stayed silent, David would only sink deeper. He would drag us both into ruin, our home, our history, everything my husband and I had fought for. He wasn't asking me to save him. He was asking me to sink with him. My throat ached as I whispered into the empty room. If I let him take me down, what kind of mother would I be? And if I stop him, what kind of mother will he think I am? The questions tore me apart, but beneath the anguish, a fragile thread of resolve began to form. The only way to save him is to stop him, even if he never forgives me. I sat straighter, my hands trembling but firm as I closed the folder. I knew what I had to do. It would cost me. Maybe even cost me his love. But I would not let my husband's life's work, my life's work, vanish into a lie. For the first time in weeks, I felt something steady inside me. Not comfort, not peace, but a grim kind of strength. I will not be silent, I said to the quiet house. And in that moment, I knew it was the hardest, truest form of love I had ever given. The day came sooner than I thought. Detective Harris called that morning. David had been summoned to the station. I went with Susan, though every step toward that building felt like walking through fire. The interview room was small, its walls dull gray, the air heavy with coffee and old paper. When they brought David in, my breath caught. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes rimmed red. Gone was the polished man who strutted into my kitchen with glossy brochures. What sat across from me looked like my boy again, but broken. Mom, he burst out, voice shaking. Please, don't let them do this. Don't let them take me away. I can fix it. I'll change. I promise. My chest tightened. Every instinct screamed to reach for him, to shield him like I did when he was small, but the folder of evidence on the table lay between us, cold and undeniable. David, I said quietly, you forged my name. You risked my house. Do you even realize what that means? He shook his head hard, tears spilling. I did it for you. You shouldn't have to live like this, counting every penny. I just wanted to give you more. I met his eyes, the hurt cutting deep. No, David. You didn't do it for me. You did it because you were desperate. You thought you could use me to cover your mistakes. He dropped into the chair, his hands covering his face. If you love me, don't let this happen. I swallowed hard, fighting the ache in my throat. I do love you. And because I love you, I can't lie for you. Real love doesn't mean covering everything up. It means letting you face the truth, even when it hurts. He looked up at me, eyes wild. You don't get it. If this deal falls apart, I'm done. Everything I built, it's gone. I leaned closer, my voice soft but firm. Then let it be gone. You can rebuild money, David. You can't rebuild trust once you've burned it. What matters isn't the deal. It's the man you become after it fails. For a heartbeat, he stared at me, lips trembling like he wanted to argue. But the words never came. I squeezed his arm gently. I can't protect you from this. What I can do is hope you learn. Hope you come back stronger. But it has to start here. He turned away, jaw tight, choosing silence. Detective Harris closed the folder with a sharp snap. The sound echoed in the room like a verdict. My heart broke as I watched my son crumble, but my resolve held, because I knew sometimes the only way to save a child is to let them fall. The precinct felt colder than it should have been. Pale gray walls, the buzz of fluorescent lights, the faint smell of burnt coffee. They led me into a small interview room, just a table, 4 chairs, and a red recording light blinking steadily in the corner. Detective Harris sat across from me, calm and steady. Beside him, Assistant District Attorney Morales arranged a stack of papers with the precision of a surgeon. When David walked in, he looked startled, almost fragile. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair a mess, but the moment his eyes landed on me, his voice broke into something rehearsed. "Mom, thank God you're here," he said quickly. "Please tell them this is a mistake. Tell them I didn't mean anything by it." I gripped the strap of my purse tighter. A mistake doesn't put my name on a mortgage. A mistake doesn't gamble the only home I have left. Harris leaned forward. "David Martinez, you've been asked to appear to discuss allegations of mortgage fraud, forgery, and identity theft. Given your mother's age, these actions may also be considered financial exploitation of an elderly adult. You're not under arrest right now, but this conversation is on the record. Do you understand?" David gave a small laugh, but it rang hollow. "Come on. Fraud? Identity theft?" It was paperwork. I was moving fast. The deal was about to close. I found my voice. "You forged my name, David." He turned to me, trying on that old smile. "Mom, I did it for us." "For you. You're sitting on equity, living so small. Don't you want to breathe a little easier? This way, I can make sure you're taken care of." "Taken care of?" I said softly. "By lying? By risking everything your father and I built?" He slammed his palm on the table. "I didn't risk it. I invested it." "You've never understood business. You'd rather cling to this crumbling house than believe in me." My throat tightened. "I believed in you when belief meant $26 a week for groceries. I believed when I went without, so you could have shoes that fit. Don't tell me I never believed." Morales slid the document across the table. "Mrs. Martinez, this isn't your signature, correct?" I looked down at the ink. My hand shook. "No, it is not mine." David's jaw tightened. "She was going to sign." She just hesitated. I moved it forward. "Everyone does it." Harris's voice was sharp. "No, son. That's a felony." Plain and simple, David turned back to me, his face cracking. "Mom, don't let them do this. Don't let them ruin me. If you love me, don't let them take me away. I'll fix it, I promise. Just sign the house over. Make it official. We can end this right here." I felt my tears come hot and fast. For a second, I wanted to fold him into my arms, pretend he was 10 years old again with skinned knees. But then I saw the hunger in his eyes. Not love, not care, but desperation. He isn't trying to save me. He's trying to use me as the last chip on his table. I whispered, "You didn't do this for me. You did it for yourself." He clenched his fists. "If you side with them, you're choosing them over your own son." "No," I said firmly. "I'm choosing to save what little we have left." "You can rebuild your pride, David, but I can't rebuild this house if it's gone. I can't rebuild trust if you burn it all down." Morales spoke again, calm but cutting. "Mr. Martinez, here are your options. Cooperate. Turn over all financial records. Stop contacting lenders. Begin restitution. We can offer a plea, probation, counseling, full repayment, and a protective order to keep you away from your mother's accounts. Or you fight this, and we file felony charges today. Your choice." David's face twisted. He looked at me one last time. "Dad would have signed," he spat. My chest broke, but I held my ground. "Your father died, teaching me the line between love and destruction, and I am standing on it." His lips trembled, eyes hard. "If you do this, you'll be alone." I shook my head. "I've already been alone." What I won't be is homeless silence. The red light on the camera blinked once, twice. Finally, Harris closed the file with a heavy snap. "That's enough for today. We'll proceed with the protective order." They escorted David to another room. At the door, he muttered without looking back, "You did this to me." I pressed my palm against the table, feeling its cold edge. "No, David. You did this to us. I'm the one refusing to be buried under it." When the door shut, the room went quiet. My heart cracked in two, but beneath the grief, a hard truth held me steady. For the first time in months, I knew exactly where I stood. I'm telling you this now because it's over, at least the loudest part of it. We went to court. There were no grand speeches, no slammed gavels like in the movies. Just fluorescent lights, a tired judge, and stacks of paper that told the story in numbers and dates. David took a deal. He didn't go to prison for years, the way my fear kept whispering in the dark. Instead, the court ordered restitution. Every dollar back, on a schedule he can't wriggle out of. 12 months of financial rehabilitation classes supervised. Quarterly audits, no new credit without approval. A protective order that keeps his hands away from my accounts, my deed, my signature. If he violates any of it, the suspended time becomes real time. The judge said that twice, looking straight at him. I kept the house. More than that, I kept the line. Susan made sure of it. She sat beside me at every hearing, her legal pad full of underlined words. Revocation of prior authorizations, limited power of attorney, credit freeze, beneficiary review. We filed them all. She walked me through closing accounts I didn't need, opening the ones I did, and setting alerts that buzz my phone if anything twitches with my name on it. She never once said, "I told you so." She just kept showing up steady as a lighthouse. I wish I could tell you I walked out of that courthouse feeling victorious. I didn't. I felt hollow. Like someone had broken a window inside me and a winter draft had moved in. But as the days passed, the hollowness made room for something sturdier. Not joy. Not yet. Something simpler. Steadiness. The kind that lets you sleep without flinching at every sound. David called once, through his attorney, to ask if I'd speak on his behalf for early termination of the program. I said no. Not out of spite, out of respect. For the lesson, for the line, for the part of him that might grow if it isn't coddled. I sat for a long time with that choice, wondering if I had become cold, unforgiving. But then I remembered how many times I had let silence cover over wrongs, how many times I had told myself next time he'll learn. Next time never came. Not until I said no. People ask if I still love him. Of course I do. That's the cruel and beautiful truth of motherhood. Love doesn't vanish when trust breaks. It changes shape. It learns to keep the door unlocked but the deadbolt on. It waits for a knock that isn't a demand. Some nights I wonder if he thinks of me as a traitor. Maybe he does. Maybe he tells himself the judge and the lawyers put him here, not his own choices. That's his work to untangle. My work is different, learning to hold both truths, that he is my son and that he hurt me deeply. As for the house, I fixed the sticking window in the den. I painted the front door a deeper red. I planted 2 new rose bushes where the old ones used to be, one for the life I've kept, one for the life I'm still learning to live. Some evenings I sit on the porch with tea and listen to the wind and the chimes. The sound is different now, not an alarm, not a lullaby. Just a reminder, I am still here. Susan showed up yesterday afternoon right on time, her leather briefcase tucked under one arm. She didn't even take her coat off before she spread my mail across the kitchen table. Bills, circulars, scam offers, she muttered, flipping through each envelope like a deck of cards. When she reached one marked in bold red letters, she slapped it down. See this? Pre-approved credit line. Straight to the shredder I poured her tea while she worked, watching the way her glasses slid down her nose, the neat pile of safe mail growing on one side. You'd think after 40 years I could sort my own letters, I said with a laugh. You can, she replied without looking up. But why should you? I'm faster. When the last envelope was opened and filed, she clapped her hands together. Coat's on. We're walking, I protested, but she hooked her arm through mine and pulled me out the front door anyway. The air was crisp, the sky painted orange by the setting sun. Susan matched my pace, steady and firm. You see, she said as we rounded the corner, nothing's chasing you anymore. The only alerts now come to me, and I'll handle them before they touch your doorstep. We walked on in silence for a bit, the gravel crunching under our shoes. Then I heard myself laugh, an unguarded, unpracticed sound I hadn't made in months. Susan grinned. There it is, she said. That's the Helen I know. And just like that, for one clear moment, the weight on my chest lifted. The court has its timetable, 12 months of classes, 24 of supervision, payments that land like clockwork. My timetable is slower. It will take time to forgive, time to trust my instincts without hating myself for how late they arrived. But I kept my home. I kept my name. And when the next wind comes, the windows will hold. Life has become quieter now. Mornings begin with the sound of sparrows at the feeder. Evenings end with the soft creak of my rocking chair on the porch. My house, still stands, not just as wood and brick, but as proof that I did not bend when it mattered most. Sometimes, when I wash the dishes or water the roses, I hear echoes of what was said in that cold interview room. His words, If you do this, you'll be alone. Still sting. But louder in my heart are my own. I've already been alone. What I won't be is homeless. That was the moment I realized strength doesn't ask permission. It simply arrives when you claim it. I look back at the papers with my forged name, at the pens slid across the table, at the tears I thought would drown me. And I realize now, every one of those moments was a test. Not of David's love, but of my own courage. I chose to draw the line, to say no, to stand. And in doing so, I found a power I didn't know was still mine. This isn't just about keeping a roof over my head. It's about justice, the kind a woman owes herself after years of putting others first. It's about proving that even at 67, widowed, betrayed, you can still rise, defend what is yours, and demand fairness. So hear me clearly. Betrayal can break your heart, but it doesn't have to break your backbone. Love can wound, but boundaries can heal. If you ever find yourself holding that pen, staring at a line someone else wants you to cross, remember me. Remember the roses I planted, the front door I painted red, the windows that now hold against the wind. And remember these words, the truest ones I've ever spoken. Boundaries are not the opposite of love. Sometimes they are the only proof it's real, because justice isn't something handed down from a courtroom alone. It's something you claim the moment you decide your life, your name, and your freedom are worth protecting. And that, I've learned, is the sweetest kind of peace. Thanks for listening. If this made you think, or if you've lived through something similar, share your thoughts in the comments. Our channel is a space for sharing tales of the elderly woman and family revenge stories from people who have weathered life's storms. Subscribe for more, because sometimes the deepest form of revenge is simply living on your own terms.